Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Samech, and this is the last daf in this third perek of Masechet Baba Batra. We have two more Mishnayot to go, and here's the first one, continuing on the theme of privacy rights. Lo yiftach adam lachasar shutafin, petach keneged petach, vechalon keneged halon. Let's say I have a house and you have a house, and they're near each other, and there's a shared courtyard in between. I am not allowed to open up an entranceway that's right in front of your entranceway, or a window right in front of your window. The reason is because, let's say you have a window there. Now, if I open up a window that looks directly into your window, then that would be an invasion of privacy. Or opening an entranceway right in front of your entranceway. So then you open the door and I can look right in. So therefore, if I want to open something, it has to be off-center, away in front of a wall, and not in front of your window. Haya katan lo ya'asenu gadol, echad lo ya'asenu shenayim. If I had a small window, I cannot make it bigger, make it a big window. And if I had one window or one entrance, I cannot make them two. I cannot add. If it was already there and I had it there, that's fine, but I cannot increase windows and entrance ways, because again, that will invade the privacy of your right to do things in your courtyard and in your home without me peering into it. Aval, potechu l'rshut harabim petach keneged petach vechalon keneged halon. However, let's say again, we have two homes, but in between our homes is a public thoroughfare. In that case, it's completely different. In that case, I am allowed to open up an entranceway, even though right across the street is your entranceway. Or I can open up a window in my wall, even though it's right across from the window that's in your house, in your wall. The difference, as the Gemara will explain, is that since there is a public thoroughfare in between, in any case, there are lots and lots of people that are walking by and can peer into your window. So you already have to keep away from the window, put shades there, and keep your own privacy. So my opening a window near, opposite your window, when there's already lots and lots of people walking by, so it's already open to the public. So my adding one more window doesn't change anything. Whereas in a shared courtyard, this is only shared by a couple of residents or a few residents of that courtyard. There's nobody else walking there in between. So there was never a window on my house, and I open up a new window or entranceway or make it bigger, so now all of a sudden I can look into your house, whereas beforehand I was not able to look into your house. So that is an invasion of privacy. Whereas if there's a public thoroughfare in between, then it's already open to the public, and I'm allowed to open something up. Hayakatan oseoto gadol ve'echad oseoto shenayim. And similarly, if I had a small window, I can make it a bigger window because there's a public thoroughfare in between. And if I had one entranceway, I can split it and make it two entranceways, even though that's more angles, more places where I could peer into your house, but that's permitted because your house is on a street. There's a street in between our houses, and so the public is looking into your house no matter what. Now we ask, what is the source of this law that I cannot open a window right in front of your window when there is a courtyard in between? Amar Rabbi Yochanan damar kerav Esab elamet einav vayadet Yisrael shochen lishbatav ma ra'a. So it says that Bilam lifted his eyes and he saw Israel dwelling tribe by tribe. And then he got Ruach HaKodesh, God spoke to him. So what did he see that was so good? He just saw that they were dwelling. What was so nice about the way they were dwelling that prompted him to give give praise and blessing to Bnei Israel. Rashen pitchei ha'olehem mechovanim ze lazeh amar reuyin alalu shetishre alehem shechina. He saw that the openings of their tents are not parallel to each other, that the opening and window of this house faces just a solid wall, and they're not open window to window or entranceway into entranceway through which they could peer into each other's homes and thereby invade their privacy. So they built their homes according to this halacha. So this is a source for this halacha, that one cannot build a window right in front of someone else's window such that one can peer in. So he said, oh, this nation is worthy that the Shekhinah should rest on them. There's a play on words of this here, Yisrael Shochen. Shochen literally means to dwell. It's talking about Israel dwelling, but it's also a double reference to Shekhinah, that the Shekhinah can dwell among them. And that's the idea that Shekhinah can dwell in a place where there is modesty and privacy in one's home. I think this connection here can help explain the theme that we saw previously in the Rabbi Ben-A'ah stories, where there was a combination of Rabbi Ben-A'ah not being allowed to go in and see the Shekhinah, like Adam Harishon in his cave in Marat HaMachpelah. It says, no, this is where the Shekhinah is, and it's too glorious, radiant, you're not allowed to go there. And Rabbi Ben-A'ah also was one that said that you have to allow women to do the laundry in the courtyard, because they should be modest and not have to go to the river where people can see them. And he talked about modesty of a romantic situation of Adam and Sarah. Well, because it's in the afterlife, so there's no Yetzer Hara. But otherwise, to peer into a couple in a romantic position would be prohibited, and so on. So Rabbi Ben-A'ah in those stories talked about that combination of having privacy in one's home, regarding one's family life, and not looking at irva and things that would diminish from what the holiness and the specialness of marital relations, and that is connected with Shekhinah. Shekhinah also, one should not peer into, think about, try to figure out matters that are beyond one's capability of understanding. And that humility and respect is what shows that we hold these things to be so special, so holy. And so here also, if Bnei Israel and their homes are built in a modest way, then that's the Shekhinah also can dwell amongst them. Okay, Haya Katan Lo Ya'asenu Gadol. The Mishnah said that if they had a small entranceway, I cannot make a big entranceway. Sebar Rami Bar Hama Lememar Bar Arba'e Lash Lishaviye Bar Temanya. Teka Shakil Temanya Bechaser. Aval Bar Tarte Lishaviye Bar Arba'e. Shapir Dameh. Okay, so now what does this mean? If it was a small entranceway, one cannot make it a big entranceway. Rami Bar Hama was analyzing this Mishnah to figure out why. And in his opinion, he wasn't dealing with privacy issues, but rather access or ownership over sections of the courtyard. We learned earlier in the Masechet that if someone has a shared courtyard and then they decide to split it, so anytime if someone has an entranceway, a door into their home, they have an automatic right to 4 amot in front of their doorway, because they need a space for unloading and loading, to put their animals there or whatever they need to put in front of their entranceway. So they automatically get that section. So if it's the doorway is a width of 4 amot or less, then that person gets at least a 4x4 area. It's before jutting out into the courtyard, and even if the door is only 2 amot wide, still he's going to get a width of 4 amot, so at least 4x4. If the doorway is larger, is wider, and let's say is 6 amot or 8 amot, then they get the entire width of that entranceway into the courtyard, 6 amot or 8 amot, however wide it is, and it would be again by 4 amot going into the courtyard. So that's the automatic rights to that courtyard. Although they're going to split the rest of it, this they get off the bat. So that's the halacha that Rami Bar Chama was concerned about. And so therefore he at first thought to explain the Mishnah as follows. If one of the members of the courtyard has a home and it has an opening that's 4 amot wide, he cannot then extend it to make it 8 amot wide, because by doing that he's going to be taking more of the area of the courtyard, because then he'll automatically have a right to, instead of just 4x4, he'll have 8x4. But let's say he has an opening of 2 amot, so just 2 amot wide, then he would be permitted to make it 4 amot wide. Why? Because he's not taking any more from the courtyard. The minimum amount that any opening gets is 4x4. So since even though it was only 2 amot wide, this opening, here he still had a right to 4 amot by 4 amot into the courtyard. So by enlarging his entranceway and making it 4 amot wide, he's not taking any more away from the courtyard. So that's Rami Bar Chama. He's focusing on this particular right of owning, having access, when you split it, getting ownership of the 4 amot in front of a courtyard. And so he says you can't extend it so in the way that you're going to get more area of the courtyard, but you can enlarge your opening if you're keeping it the same. However, Amar le Rava, Masi Amar le bepitchat zutra mesina leitzta noe minach, bepitchat Rabba la masena itzta noe minach. However, Rava says, I interpret the Mishnah more stringently, and it would prohibit even the second case that you said, where it was 2 and he made it into 4, because Rava is saying, I'm taking into account not only this issue of ownership of the courtyard, but also the problem of of privacy rights and looking into your home. Because let's say you have that 2 amot wide and you want to open it into 4, and I'm your neighbor in the courtyard. I can say, if you have a small opening, then I can conceal myself. I can see the angle and how much you can see out of that just 2 amot opening entranceway. And so I'll go off to the side. But once you extend it and enlarge it, make it 4 amot wide, then I have a harder time concealing myself, because the wider the entrance, then the more that you can see out of it into my home or into the courtyard where I want to do private things. And so Rava, according to Rava, you cannot enlarge an entranceway, not even from 2 to 4. And for sure he would agree that you can't make it 4 to 8. Now, similarly, echad lo ya'asenu shenaim. The Mishnah said if there's 1 entranceway, you cannot make it 2 in a shared courtyard. Seba Rami Bar Chama lememar ba'ad arba'eh la leshaviyeh tere bene tarteh tekashakil temane bechaser aval bar temane leshaviyeh bene arba'eh shapir dameh. So Rami Bar Chama, who was again focusing just on the ownership rights in the courtyard, he thought to say, what is the Mishnah prohibiting? Only, let's say you have an opening of 4 amot, you cannot separate it and make the same 4 amot into 2 entrances of 2 over here and 2 over there. You're still keeping the same 4 amot of entranceway, but beforehand it was all in 1 entranceway, and now you want to move it and put 2 on this side of your house and a 2 amma entranceway on that side of the house. That you're not allowed to do, because beforehand you had access to 4 by 4 in the courtyard in front of the 4 amma entranceway. But now that you make it 2 by 2, now you're going to get 8 amot, because every 2 amot entranceway gets the minimum of at least 4 by 4 in the courtyard. So you're going to have 4 by 4 over here and another 4 by 4 over there. So then you're going to have altogether 8 by 4, and before you had only 4 by 4. So for sure you're not allowed to do that. But let's say at the start you had an entranceway that was 8 amot wide, and now you want to move it and split it in half and put 4 amot of entranceway on this side and make a 4 amot entranceway on the other side. And that would be allowed according to Rami Bar Chama, because you're still retaining the same amount of rights in the space of the courtyard, because you already had 8 by 4, and now you're just moving it and putting 4 by 4 here and 4 by 4 there, but it still adds up to the same 8 by 4. So Rami Bar Chama thought that would be permitted. Amar le Rava, Masi Amar le, Bechad pitcha masena itztanu eminach, Betre la masina itztanu eminach. Rava, however, again is taking into account the rights of privacy of looking in. And so I can say to you, listen, you had 1 entranceway before, so I know, okay, this is a big entranceway you have here, 8 by 4. I can conceal myself and I'll go to a different side, a different area where you cannot see. But now if you separate this 1 entranceway into 2 entranceways, even though they're smaller, but still it's in 2 different places, and now you can see even more, and I have a harder time concealing my privacy. And therefore, I can stop you from doing that. So again, Rava is more stringent than Rami Bar Chama, because he's taking into account how far one can see. Aval poteachu l'rshut harabim petach keneged petach. The Mishnah said that all those prohibitions applied in a shared courtyard. But if there's a street in between us, then I'm permitted to open an entranceway right parallel to yours, or a a window parallel to yours or to enlarge them. And the reason is because I can tell you, in the end, you still have to hide yourself from the public domain. There's people walking by all the time, potentially looking into your windows and into your entranceway. And so you're going to have to conceal yourself no matter what. So my adding another window in front of your window is not harming you in any way. Next Mishnah. En osin halal tachat reshut rabim barot shichin u'me'arot. Rabbi Eliezer matir kedei sheyeteheh agala mehalechet ut'ona abanim. Mishnah says that a person is not allowed to make spaces underneath the public thoroughfare. For example, if he wants to dig a pit or ditches or caves underneath, because it will weaken the surface. So if I dig a pit, even if I cover it, still the cover might not be so sturdy, or it might degrade over time. Or if I make a tunnel or cave underneath, so then I'm weakening the foundation of the street, and then if someone comes in over the street with some heavy item, then they will fall down and damage themselves. So I cannot create a public hazard by doing that. Now, Rabbi Eliezer permits, as long as the cover or the ground that I leave above this tunnel is sufficiently strong that a wagon carrying heavy stones would be able to go over it without a problem. So as long as it's sturdy enough for that, then it's permitted. The Gemara will ask why the rabbis would disagree. If I put a sturdy cover on it, then what's the problem? We'll get to that. En motzi'in zizin ugzuz teraot reshut rabim ela im rasa kones etoch shelo umosi. I am not allowed. Let's say I have a property that's adjacent to the public thoroughfare, and so let's say I have a wall that's right on the borderline, and now I want to put projections. I want to put some hooks or things sticking out of my wall, or I want to build a balcony, and that will go into the public domain. I'm not allowed to do that, obviously, because I'm diminishing from the space of the public domain. People want to walk by, and now they're going to bump into these projections, these hooks or balconies that I'm putting there. So obviously that's not allowed. If I want to have a balcony, I want to be able to see outside, or I want to hang things on hooks outside my wall. So if I want to do that, then what I have to do is I have to move my wall within the boundary of my property, move it 2-3 feet in, and then I could build a balcony beyond that, as long as the edge of the balcony or the end of that projection doesn't go into the Reshut Rabim. So that will be permitted. So now we have the last line, Lakach haseru bazizin ugzuz teraot harezo. Let's say I buy a property from someone else, and it has a wall, and it has things sticking out beyond the wall. Now, I don't know. I didn't build it. I'm just buying it. I don't know if these things are sticking out into the Reshut Rabim, or if the previous owner moved the wall in from the property line and built them all on his property. So I'm just a buyer. I don't know. So the law is that we protect the buyer, and we assume there's a chazakah that the previous owner did it properly, and these things sticking out are part of his property, and I'm buying it, so then I can keep them there, and the public cannot come and say, hey, these things are sticking to Reshut Rabim. Listen, I'm only a buyer. I don't know how they got there, but we can presume a chazakah that they were done correctly. Otherwise, they should have complained and taken care of it before with the previous buyer. V'Rabbanan zimnin demifchit v'lav da'ateh. Now, Rabbanan, how come they say you're not allowed to make any caves and ditches and pits in the public street, even if you cover it, and it's a strong cover, even so strong that it will carry a wagon laden with stones? How come Rabbi Eliezer permits it? Makes sense. Why did Rabbanan not permit it? And the reason is because sometimes it will erode over time and you won't be aware. So right now I dug a pit, I put a nice solid cover, but over time, wear and tear, it gets weaker and weaker. And then one day, maybe in a year or 2 years, someone's going to go over it with a heavy load and will fall in. And so, Rabbanan are concerned even about the future possibility of damage, and says, don't even do it now, because I'm going to put a cover and then go away and then not maintain it. And so he says I have to be responsible even for the possibility of future damage. Rabbi Eliezer says as long as I take care of no damage happening now, I don't have to worry about the future. In the future, someone will have to come and maintain it. So it's sufficient that I take care of the way if it's sufficiently strong and supported now, then I'm permitted to dig there. En mosi'in zizin ugzuz teraot v'chule. Now the Mishnah said, I'm not allowed to make projections and balconies sticking out of the wall into the Shut Rabim. Rabbi Ameh, hava le zizad hava nafek lemovoa, vahu gabra nameh hava le zizad hava mapek le Shut Rabim. Havu kame akebi ale b'nei Shut Rabim. Atale kamed Rabbi Ameh, amar le zil kos. A very interesting story. A couple of stories we're going to have that are similar. Rabbi Ameh, he himself had a projection protruding into the alleyway in his own home, and there was also some other guy that he was going to be a litigant that also had these projections that are going into the Shut Rabim. Rabbi Amez were sticking out into the mavoy, into the shared alleyway. And this guy had his thing sticking out into the public thoroughfare. And they were stopping the people from walking in the thoroughfare. There's a lot of people walking. They need all the space of the thoroughfare, and then they can't walk where this guy has these balconies sticking out. So the people came to complain about this guy. And who was the judge? Rabbi Ameh himself. So they came to Rabbi Ameh, and he told this defendant, you have to go cut those projections. You can't have them sticking out into the Shut Rabim. Now this guy, he has a good defense. He said, but the master, you the judge, you and your home also have things sticking out from your wall. And so you're telling me to cut them, but you yourself are guilty of the same thing. Rabbi Ameh, however, said there's a difference. Didi limvoa mapik, b'nei mevoa machli gabay, didach l'shut rabim mapik, man machil gabach. Says my projections are sticking out into a shared alleyway, and I asked all the people in the alleyway, and they said it's okay, we don't mind. And so since I got their permission, so I'm permitted to leave them there. This is the only reason I can't put them there is because they might be annoying the people that are walking by. So this is an alleyway. I went down door to door. You mind if I put a hook sticking out into the alleyway? They said, it's fine. We don't mind. It's a sufficient room. It's okay. And so I got permission. Your projections are into the public domain. Who are you going to ask? Are you going to ask every single person that passes by? There are many, 100, maybe thousands of people, strangers walking by all the time. You have to have permission from everybody in the whole world. So that's the difference between my situation is in the alleyway. It's permitted if I get permission. Your situation is in the public domain where you couldn't possibly get permission. So go and cut them and don't point the finger at me. Another story in the same theme. Rabbi Yanai hava le ilan hanotel l'shut rabim, hava hu gabrada hava le nameh ilan hanotel l'shut rabim. Rabbi Yanai had a tree that was on his, the roots were on his domain, the trunk, but it leaned over, the top of it leaned over onto the street. And there was another guy, a litigant, who also had the same thing, a tree on his property that was leaning over into the public domain. Atu b'nei l'shut rabim havu kam now the people, the public came and they were stopping him from leaving it there. They brought a legal complaint. Said this guy, his tree is going into the Shut Rabim and it's making it hard for us to walk there and to use it. So they came to the Bianai, and the Bianai realizes that he has the same thing as this litigant. So how is he going to say he's guilty, but when he has the same thing? So the Bianai stalls for time. He says, listen, come back tomorrow, leave now, come back tomorrow and I'll adjudicate the case. Overnight, he cut down that tree that he himself owned that was leaning into the Shut Rabim. So the next day, the litigants came again, and the Bianai, as the judge says, go cut down your tree. The defense was ready, and he said, "Oh, my master, the Bianai, the judge, you have the same thing. Why are you telling me to cut it down?" See, this is why the Bianai needed to cut it down overnight because he anticipated this defense. And now he said, "Amar le zil hazeh, I kosti di kosti dach, ila kosti di la He says, go and see if I have a tree. If I cut mine down, then you have to cut yours down. If I didn't cut mine down, then you won't have to cut down yours either. I'm not going to make a double standard from myself and you. I already cut down my tree, so you have to cut it down also. Okay, so he wanted to make sure that there would not even be a semblance of him making a double standard and permitting something for himself and prohibiting it on someone else. But now we ask, but what was he thinking beforehand? Even before a defendant comes, why was it a bi'anai doing something that was impinging on the public property? What was he thinking at first when he left the tree there? And what changed his mind to cut it down? At first he thought, you know what? I'm doing something beneficial for the public because they can sit in its shade. It's a nice high tree and it's providing shade and they sit there. And so I thought at first that I'm doing a public benefit and that people, not only do they not mind, but they also like the tree being there. However, now that the public brought this suit against this other guy who also has a tree, and they didn't say, "Oh yeah, we like the shade." They didn't like it. There are branches sticking out, this thing's falling down, and they didn't want to have it there. And so I said, oh, you know what? I see the public really doesn't want it. And so I better cut mine down also. Maybe the people didn't complain to the BNI because the BNI is a sage and they didn't want to complain. They gave him a free ride. But really, they did care and preferred the tree not to be there. So from the fact that they brought a suit against this other guy, then he realized that the public would rather not have the shade and not have the tree. And so once he realized that he's not doing a public good, so he cut down his own tree. Another question on how he ruled it. Why did he go and cut his tree down first? Why not give the law right on the first day and say, you cut down yours and I'll cut down mine? Why not tell the litigant to do it first? Why did he go and cut down his tree first and only then tell the defendant to cut it down? Mishum Resh Lakish Tamarit Kosheshu v'Koshu Keshot Atzmach v'Achar Kach Keshot Acherim. Because of what Resh Lakish says, quoting a pasuk in Sefania that says, "Gather yourselves together and gather," or another play on words, Koshu is like Keshot, adorn yourselves and then adorn others. In other words, take care of your problems first, and only then ask other people to do the same. And so make sure you are beautiful and you're doing everything properly first before you give the same criticism. It would be hypocritical of the BNI to say, you cut yours down first and then I'll do mine. No, you take care of your house first, and then you can go and be a judge and adjudicate others. The Mishnah said that if I do want to have a balcony or projection outside of my wall, then I have a simple solution. I can move my wall within my boundary a few feet, and then I can have projections outside of the wall, and they will not go into the public domain. They will stop before the borderline. We have a follow-up question. Let's say I moved the wall in, but then I never got around to actually building a projection or balcony out of it. And so in the meantime, now people are starting to walk in that area where I pulled my balcony in, and maybe they got used to walking there. So now I want to decide to put a balcony. I didn't put it right away. I waited a while. I waited a long time, but now I want to put a balcony. Can I put a balcony at that point? Or since the public got used to walking in that area, maybe now that's considered the public area. And I mean, it's technically mine, but there's a law that we're going to quote that if the public gets used to a path through my field, then I have to allow that path to stay there, and I cannot take it away. So what do we say about that in this case? Machloket. Rabbi Yochanan amar kanas mosi, v'Resh Lakish amar kanas eno mosi. Rabbi Yochanan says, if I moved my wall back in, then I can extend it, even if it's later, and even if people start walking there. It's my property, and that's why I moved the wall in, so I don't have to do it right away. I can wait and do it later. Resh Lakish, however, says no. If I want to build it right away, then that's fine. But now, once I moved my wall in, and people already got used to walking and using that area, now they have a right to use that area on my property, and now I cannot build a balcony there anymore. Amar le Rabbi Yaakov le Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa asber alach leosiku le'amala peligi demosi. However, there's another interpretation of this machloket by Rabbi Yaakov, and he told Rabbi Yirmiyah. I have a different explanation of this matter, and in fact, both Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish agree that if I moved my wall in, and now I want to make a projection, everyone agrees that I'm permitted to do that, even after a long time. That was not the machloket. Ki peligi lachazir ketalim limkoman. The machloket was only if I move the wall in, and now I want to put the wall back, right? Control Z. I don't want to have the wall inside my property. I want to build it again right up at the border where it was earlier. And in fact, I'm going to switch around. Rabbi Yochanan is actually the one that's more stringent. And he says, once you move the wall in, you cannot move it back anymore. Whereas Resh Lakish says, even though I moved the wall in, I can return it there. Let's explain the two opinions. Rabbi Yochanan says, once I move the wall into my property, I cannot put it back because of the ruling of Rav Yehuda, who said that if there's a pathway and the public already got used to walking through my field in a certain pathway, so then I cannot ruin it. I cannot take it away, even though it is my property. But that's it. It's like an eminent domain of the public. And so the same thing here. I moved my wall in. The public thoroughfare now got expanded, and now there's people walking there. So they got used to walking there. So now they have a right to it, and I cannot move my wall back. Resh Lakish says, I can put the wall back. What about Rav Yehuda's ruling? Rav Yehuda's ruling was only if there's no other space. But if there is more space, then I am allowed to. In the case of a field, where everybody started taking a shortcut through my field, I didn't stop them, and now they already got used to it. So that's the shortcut. If I ruin it, then they won't have that path at all. They'll have to go all the way around. And so then they have a right to it. But here, the public thoroughfare is already there. And now I moved my wall in 3 feet, so now they have an extra 3 feet. So there's just more space. But now if I move my wall back, so they can still walk in the public thoroughfare. It's not like they have to go around and they can't walk there at all. So I only gave them extra space. So now I can take away that extra space because it's all my property. That's not the same as taking away their path altogether. Now the Mishnah says if I buy a field, buy a home, a property, and it already has a wall and projections or balconies sticking out of the wall on the side of the Reshut Rabim. So I can have a presumptive status that these were built legally, that the previous owner moved the wall into the property and built these on his own property, and I bought it, and that's proper. Amar Rav Yehuda nafla chozer boneota. Rav Huna adds another kula. Not only am I allowed to keep the balconies there, even if they fell down, I can rebuild it the same way. This chazakah is not only for the existing structure, but it's grandfathered in, even if I have to rebuild it if it broke. Because you might have thought that once it breaks, so now there's nothing there. I don't have a chazakah anymore. Maybe now I have to prove that, this wall is not my property line. I own the property even beyond the wall, and I can't prove it. So maybe I would lose the chazakah. Not so. The chazakah continues even after it's broken. We have a challenge to this from a baraita. It's also a tosefta. The context of the baraita, we will see more fully in a minute, is about things that one does, zecher lechorban, memory of the destruction of Jerusalem and of the Bet HaMikdash in one's home. En miyasedin ve'en mechayedin ve'en mefayechin bazeman hazeh. The baraita says one cannot put plaster and tile and paint, meaning beautiful paint with colors and designs, in one's home. Of course, you have to have a home, you have to have something, but you can't make it extra beautiful in these things because we're mourning over the Bet HaMikdash, and so we should not have such a beautiful home. Lakacha ser mesuyedet mechuyedet mefuyachat harezo behazkata nafla eno chozer boneota. However, let's say I buy a house and it already is plastered or tiled or painted nicely, so it's already there, and I bought it that way. I can leave it there and I can live in the house. I didn't paint it. I can leave it there. That's okay. However, if it falls down and now I'm going to rebuild it, I am not allowed to replace that beautiful tile or painting anymore. So here, this is a contradiction to Rav Huna, because Rav Huna said that this, when it says I have a chazakah for the balconies, that extends even if they broke, I can replace them. But when it comes to this baraita about mourning over the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, if I can leave it there, if it's already there, if I buy it, but if it breaks, I cannot put it back. So shouldn't that be the same law? And the answer is Isura Shaneh. When it comes to a prohibition, that's different from a monetary or civil matter. When it comes to a prohibition, there's a prohibition that we should not enjoy too much and have such a beautiful home. So I cannot paint the wall. If it's already there, I don't have to ruin it. I can leave it there, but it's a prohibition to paint it. So if it's already painted, I can leave it there. But if it falls, I'm not allowed to paint it. So that's talking about a prohibition. Here is talking about monetary matters where there's a chazakah that I own this in a proper way and it was built in a proper way. So that continues even if it was broken. I can put it back. So mamona is different from isura. Tenorabanan lo yasud adam et beto basid vim aire bo chol oteben mutar. A Baraita says that a person is not allowed to plaster his home with plaster, but if you that because it's too beautiful. But if you mix sand or straw in it, then it's permitted because then it will be more dull and the plaster won't look so beautiful. Rabbi Yehuda omer aire bo chol arezo terakesid ve'asur teven mutar. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. And he says if you put sand in it, then it actually be this white cement, which is even more durable and beautiful than seed. So that's even worse, meaning it's nicer, and therefore it's more prohibited because of the mourning of the Bet HaMikdash. However, if you put straw into it, then he agrees with the Tanakama that the straw makes it more dull, and that would be permitted to put plaster as long as you have straw in it, so it won't look so beautiful. Tenorabanan, and here's the main baraita. Keshecharav habayit b'sheniyah, rabu pirushin b'Yisrael shelo le'echol basar v'shelo lishtot yayin. When the second Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, there were many ascetics, lifrosh, to separate from others. The people that would separate from all material things because they were so sad and such mourning. Imagine someone who loses a loved one and they don't want to enjoy themselves. They don't want to do anything that's beneficial. Some people get into depression. They don't want to eat or drink or do anything that even things that are necessary for their existence. So these people were so sad about the destruction of Bet HaMikdash, they stopped eating meat and they stopped drinking wine. Rabbi Yoshua was against this policy, but he wanted to argue with them from the inside. So he joined the group. He says, I want to be a member of your ascetic group. אמר להן, בניי, מפני מה אי אתן אוכלים בשר ואין אתם שותים יין? אמרו לו, נאכל בשר שמנו מקריבין על גבי המזבח ועכשיו בטל, נשתה יין שמנסחין על גבי המזבח ועכשיו בטל. So Rabbi Yoshua comes, he joins the group, and then he's na'aseh v'nishma. He joins the group and then he says, oh, by the way, why are we doing this? Right? Why are you not eating meat and drinking wine? And they said, should we eat meat that we used to sacrifice its meat on the Mizbeach, and now the altar is gone and we can no longer have sacrificial meat. Can we enjoy meat ourselves when there's no Mizbeach to be able to sacrifice meat? How can we drink wine that we poured as libations on the altar? And now there's no altar, we cannot make wine libations. Hashem cannot enjoy it. The Bet HaMikdash cannot enjoy wine. We should be able to sit around and enjoy wine. We feel like it's not in the proper spirit. We're too mourningful. Amar lehem, im ken, lechem lo nochal, shekabar batlu menachot. But Rabbi Yoshua uses a reductio ad absurdum. Right? How far are you going to go with this? According to the same logic, you cannot eat bread because there's no meal offerings that were made from flour, and those are gone, so we should not enjoy bread anymore. And I said, you're right. Okay, we're going to stop eating any bread. Efshar beperot, but we can survive on fruit. But Rabbi Yoshua says, Perot lo nochal shekevar batu bikurim. No, you can't eat fruit anymore because there's no more first fruits. Offering of the first fruits is gone. Stop eating fruit. So they said, all right, efshar beperot acherim. You're right. We're going to stop eating fruit of the 7 species. That's what's chayav in bikurim. But we'll eat other fruit. We'll have apples and cherries. oranges, things that you don't have to bring as bikurim. Ma'im lo nishteh shekvar batel nisucha ma'im shatku. But Rabbi Yoshua, this is the zinger. He said, well, then you can't drink water because there's a water libation that's brought on Sukkot. We can't do that anymore, so no more drinking water. So they had no answer to that because you can't survive without drinking any water. So Rabbi Yoshua said, listen, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you're doing it the wrong way. Amar lehen, banai, bov amar lachem, shelo litabel kol ikari efshar shekaba nigzera gezera, ulitabel yoter midai I efshar she'en gozrin gezera ala sibur, ela im ken rob asibur yecholin la'amod ba. This is my sons. Let me explain to you what to do. Not to mourn at all, that's impossible, because this terrible decree was already fulfilled, and the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, and this is a terrible thing. We have to think about it, we have to remember it, and we have to mourn and grieve over its loss. Absolutely. And you're right for thinking in that way. However, you took it too much to an extreme. To mourn too much is also impossible, because one cannot make a decree on the public unless most of the people are able to fulfill it. You can't make a decree that's so harsh, that's so stringent, that maybe there's one or two people that can fulfill it. But if people can't fulfill it, then it's an invalid decree. And your decree not to have meat and not to drink wine, and then the same logic will extend, hardly to eat anything, can't hardly drink anything, is impossible to live. We have to live on, even though this is a terrible thing that happened, we have to live another day, and hopefully we'll get it back one day. But if you're going to do this, then we're just going to totally die out. So, and how do you know that you cannot make a decree that most people cannot fulfill? As it says in Pasuk in Malachi, Tichti b'me'era atem ne'arim ve'oti atem kobe'im hagoy kulom. You are cursed with the curse, and yet, even though you're under a curse and you're suffering with punishment, still you are robbing me. The context is the people were not giving ma'aser, and they weren't doing other observances. And who does this apply to? Hagoy kulo, the whole nation. Meaning that one will be punished only if they don't keep things that apply to the whole nation. But if there is a decree that the rabbis make, or a Sanhedrin makes, but it's so stringent that most people cannot fulfill it, then it does not apply. And therefore, your decrees are too stringent. They're impossible to live that way. And therefore, we follow a balance. And here's the right balance that you should do. The rabbis instead said that one is allowed to plaster his house with plaster as long as you leave a small amount without plaster. You just leave it the raw wall, whatever stone wall, whatever it's made out of. Now, how much do you have to leave not finished? 1 amah by 1 amah. Rav Chisda adds that it should be in front of the entrance, so it should be visible, not somewhere in the basement, in the attic where no one's going to look anyway, but make it a prominent place. It doesn't have to be the whole house, just one area, so that you remember that the Beit HaMikdash is still not built. And similarly, one should make a nice meal. Put out everything, make a beautiful meal, full all the courses, but just leave out one course, small thing. What does it mean? What's an example of a small thing? For example, these small fried fish. This is a normal dish that they had at a meal. So leave this out and leave on the table where normally that fried fish would be. You leave that spot empty, and people come and say, "Oh, where's the fried fish?" Zecher HaMikdash. We can enjoy ourselves, but not 100%. You do something that at least you'll remember that we cannot have 100% of enjoyment. A woman is allowed to have all her cosmetics, but jewelry, and do everything to beautify herself, but she should leave out one thing in memory of the Beit HaMikdash to show some sadness. Maihi amar Rav bat sid'a shene'amar im eshkachich Yerushalayim tishkach yemini tidbak leshoni lechiki. So what is this small thing that a woman should leave out? Rav says on the forehead, women would put a depilatory on their foreheads to beautify their foreheads, make it look larger, and remove the hair there. So Rav said they should stop doing that, and leave a mark of not 100% beauty, and that mark should be prominent on their forehead. Everything else, they can adorn themselves, put makeup, jewelry, everything they want. Now, why there? Because the pasuk says, if I forget Jerusalem, and the continuation is al rosh simchati, al rosh, on the highest joy, but it's also al rosh, on one's head. And so she should leave something out from her cosmetic routine, and the best place to do that is on one's head in order to fulfill this pasuk. Another application of that same pasuk, Mai al rosh simchati, Amar Rav Yitzchak, Ze efer makle sheberosh hatanim. Rosh simchati, this refers to burnt ashes that was put on the foreheads of grooms. This was a custom that the groom would put some ashes on their head, and during the wedding. And that way, even though they're all dressed up and they look beautiful and all that, still this would be a reminder that even on our happiest occasion at a wedding, we still do something to remember the Bet HaMikdash, and they would do it literally al rosh, on their heads. Amar le Rav Papa l'Abaye, Hecha manachla. So Rav Papa asked Abaye, where precisely on their head? On top of their head? On the side of their head? Where should it be? Bimkom tefillin, right above their forehead, where you put the tefillin. Shenemar lasum la'abele Sion latet lahem pe'er tachat efer. This is to fulfill the pasuk in Yeshaya, that eventually we will appoint to them that mourn in Zion and give them a garland instead of ashes. In other words, if we mourn properly and think about the Bet HaMikdash and think about the reasons why it was destroyed, about Sinat Chinam, and we make teshuvah, and then the Geulah will come. So then those who mourned over the Bet HaMikdash, mourned over Sion, they will get to celebrate, and we will replace the ashes with pe'er. Now in Yechezkel, pe'er is a reference to the tefillin. And so therefore, it's the same thing, the same spot. Wherever you would normally put tefillin, that's where you should put the ashes, so that it will fulfill this pasuk, that eventually when we see the redemption, then in the same place where we put ashes on the grooms, that's where we can put crowns instead, garlands instead. That's the place of the tefillin. This, incidentally, is the reason why on Tisha B'Av we do not put on tefillin in public in the morning, because that's pe'er, and now we should put efed, or ashes, not a sign of glory of the tefillin, and so that's the reason why we put it on either in private or in the afternoon, already when we're thinking about Geulah, even on Tisha B'Av. Anyone who mourns for the destruction of Jerusalem will merit to see its joy. As the pasuk says, here's the full pasuk, Simchu et Yerushalayim, vegilu ba kol ohabeha. Rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad for her, all those who love her. Sisu ita masos, kol hametabelim aleha. Join in her jubilation, all those who mourn for her. It's those who remembered Yerushalayim and mourned for her, and thought about it, and thought what we have lost, and how vulnerable we are, and the sins that we made to cause this. Those people will encourage the teshuvah and the redemption, and therefore will merit to see its celebration and reconstruction. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha, Miyom shechar Bet HaMikdash dinu shenigzor al asmenu shelo le'echol basar ve'lo lishtot yayin ela en gozin gezel al sibur elem ken rob sibur yicholin la'amod ba. Repeating a similar phrase, a theme that we just saw. Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha teaches in a baraita. From the day that the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, really by right, we should make a gezerah on ourselves and not to have meat and not to drink wine at all year round. But you cannot make a gezerah on the public unless most people can abide by it. So therefore, we do only for 9 days. We stop eating meat and drinking wine, and you see how much trouble people have with stopping to eat meat even for just 9 days. So that's appropriate. You do something that's a shorter time, to have some time period during the year where we focus our attention and think about Jerusalem a lot. We think about it a little bit every day, especially at weddings and happy occasions. We think about Jerusalem. But otherwise, we have to go on living, because otherwise we won't survive through the difficulties of the time in order to be around and be able to merit seeing the reconstruction and the redemption. ומيום שפשטה מלכות הרשעה, שגוזרת עלינו גזרות רעות וקשות, ומבטלת ממנו תורה ומצוות, ואין מנחת אותנו להיכנס לשבוע הבן, ואמרי לה לישוע הבן, דהיינו שנגזור על עצמנו שלא לישא אישה, ולהוליד בנים, ונמצא זרעו של אברהם אבינו קלה מאליו, אלא הנח להם לישראל מוטב שיהיו שוגגין, ואל יהיו מזידין. And now we end with quite an amazing statement from the time that the wicked kingdom, a reference to the Romans, spread. They took over they took over Israel, and they make evil decrees. There were different points in history when the Romans were more tolerant and less tolerant, but especially after the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash and after the Bar Kokhba revolt, the Hadrianic persecutions, those were from some low points when the Romans made gezerot that were harsh and evil decrees against Israel, and they said, you're not allowed to study Torah, you're not allowed to perform mitzvot, and they would not allow us to perform circumcision. Shibua haben means a week for the son. A week after the son is born, then on the 8th day, they do a circumcision. They said you can't do that. Another version is not Shevu haben, but Yeshua haben, the salvation of the firstborn, talking about the redemption of Pidyon haben. The Romans would not let them do that. So from the time that we have all these terrible decrees, really by right, we should make a decree upon ourselves not to get married and not to have children. Because how can you bring children into the world when things are so terrible and the persecution is so harsh? However, the problem is that if we do that, then the descendants of Abraham will cease on their own. And so the decrees of the Romans, if we react really by right, it's so bad that how can we go on? Right? That's how terrible the situation is. And so we should really not get married at all, because marriage is a happy thing. How could we do something happy? Having children is a happy thing. How can you bring children into the world where things are so terrible? So really, the truth is things are so bad that really we shouldn't. But obviously, the outcome of that would be worse than anything that the enemy would do to us. So rather, what do? We leave Israel alone. Better that they should be shogeg, that they should violate this unwittingly rather than intentionally. And so we know what? The rabbis say, we're just not going to say anything. People will go on living, even though we should stop all marriages and all children, because how can you go on? But we have to go on, and we know that. So therefore, let Israel go ahead, and we're not going to say a decree out loud, and so they'll go on, and they'll violate this feeling with unwitting and not intentionally. Don't say, hey, don't do it. They're going to do it anyway. People are going to marry. They're going to have families, and really, they need to. So it's ending on really such a tragic dilemma, paradox of how can you go on living when we lost so much and we're still under that persecution. They were at the time of the Romans, and yet we have to find some way of building for the future. What a beautiful way to end a whole chapter on Chizkat HaBatim, about building homes. And one of the major themes of this is respecting the rights of our neighbors, even the rights of privacy, so that within our homes we can continue with having families, building families, growing families that are strong and respectful and humble and modest. And through fulfilling all of these laws, then we can hopefully merit to see that full redemption. Hadran alach, chizkat habatim.